Well, I'm here with Pastor Brian Henderson, who is become a close friend of mine and a fellow pastor out on the front lines of ministry. Brian serves as the pastor of First Baptist Jackson, South Carolina, a very healthy church. It's been in a great growth pattern, and he's doing a fantastic job. Brian's in year three, year two,
Year four.
year four of pastoring First Baptist Jackson. Man, that went pretty quickly. And like I said, doing a fantastic job. Brian, why don't you just introduce yourself and talk a little bit about you, your ministry, and your family as well?
Actually, it's year five. I'm sorry.
Is it year
My name is
five?
Brian.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, hard to believe. My name is Brian Henderson. I'm pastor here at First Baptist. I also run a nonprofit. We do create a mission trip experience, if you will, where we take on about 10 houses in 1 week's time with about 120 volunteers. And so we really gear that around families coming to serve together and try to bridge some of the generational gaps and some of the racial divides that are out there, and hopes to share the gospel with homeowners and whatnot. So I do that, and then I'm also the assistant fire chief of our local fire department here. Been in the ministry for about 18 years now, and on the front lines of trying to take a traditional Southern Baptist church and make a discipleship making culture a part of who we are. And that's a interesting thing 5 years in at this church, but getting to see how the Lord does that, and trying to find a process that works, and being able to reproduce disciples that can reproduce disciples. And so this has been a very interesting thing for me to be a part of at this point, because it's truly a passion of mine. I feel like that's one of the things that we miss in church culture today, is the ability to make disciples, and something I hope to learn through this process, but also something that I hope to be able to implement well in our setting here. And so very small town feel here in Jackson, South Carolina. And so we are able to have that small town culture. And so I think that is something that we combat a lot, where there's a lot of pros to that. Everybody knows everybody, but there's a lot of cons in that as well, as because they run off of a lot of assumptions. And so, I think that's one of the things we battle in the disciple making process. So, but yeah, glad to be a part.
Yeah, the Virtual Faith Link is all about training. And you are a person who trains people to do things. You love seeing people get activated. You love to train people to train people. So let me ask you this. What is the local church missing from your perspective regarding true ministry training and a mentality for that?
Oh, I think one of the biggest things that we do in the traditional church setting, and one of the things that fails, at least in my observation of working with other churches and other pastors, we kind of set up the buffet and say, here's all the food, right? We're really good at presenting that and say, all right, come and get it. And I don't think that's a biblical model. I think the biblical model is that we serve and we take it to the table, and we serve them based off of their needs and their wants and their desires, and much like a waiter would in a restaurant versus a buffet line. And I think we operate more in that buffet line, where it's, okay, here's all the tools, here's all the information, here's all the Bible studies, here's all the curriculum, here's everything, but it's up to the end user to get engaged, right? And I think that what we are missing is the ability to go and meet someone where they're at, and figure out the best way to engage them, figure out what their needs are, and um, do that in a one-on-one basis. And being able to reproduce that time and time again can't be done through a program. And I honestly think that when we look at all the discipleship material that's out there, and I hate to be grouping all of them together, but they're all programs. And, I don't think that's the way we find that in biblical context. When we look at biblical context, it's not about a program, a one size fits all, or here's everything, come get it. It's Jesus going and meeting people where they are, and meeting their individual needs to get them closer to Him.
Yeah, when you were thinking earlier and seeing the design for the virtual faith link, one of the things that connected with you was the historic development of our culture and the church in our culture, how it's affected by our unhealthy focus on numbers and counting and church growth in numeric senses, and how it's affected the rise of the nuns. What can you share about your thoughts on that?
I think one, it's a pride issue, right? We've got to get over the fact that it doesn't matter the size of the church that we serve. It doesn't matter if it's a church of 50 or a church of 30 or a church of 3,000 or a church of 500 or a church of 200. Um, that has nothing to do with how faithful you are or how good you are at what you do. So I think it's a pride issue first and foremost to get over on the numbers thing. The other thing that I think we've done, especially specifically in the Southern Baptist culture, I think if you look back and look at our history and the way that we operate in our culture in the churches, I think you could trace it all the way back as early as the 50s. And I think of the slogan, "A million more in 54." That was the Southern Baptist slogan in 1954, is a million more in 54. They wanted to see more come to Christ, which is a great ambition. But the question is, what do we do with them? If we just get them converted and don't train them how to walk like Jesus, we've only done a part of the Great Commission. And Jesus didn't say just baptize them, just get them converted, right? And I realize that there's a difference there as well, but that's only one part of the process. The other process is teaching them all that I have commanded you. And so, and I think there's a difference between the teaching and the training, and that's what Jesus did when He said, "Hey, follow me." And He spoke to all of His disciples and let them follow Him for 3 years. He trained them how to deal with people. He trained them what they should be about doing. And I think that's exactly what we are missing when we get to focus on numbers and the unhealthy idea that just because we have more numbers or more people that we're stronger or we're healthier. I know firsthand that bigger numbers are not always a good thing, especially if they're not gained and have the process or a process in place to disciple them as they come. It's a very unsustainable, unhealthy growth. And so, when you look at the church culture in our history, we've got to do away with it's about getting more people in the church. Yes, that is part of the goal. That is part of the process, get more people coming to Christ. But we've also got to have something to do with them once we get them here. And so I think that's where the discipleship process is really lacking in our churches today. And that's one of the things that Virtual Faith Link has my interest about, is the fact that it's not just about conversion. It's not a program, but rather it's a process that's based off of individual needs, meeting individuals where they are, figuring out what their needs are, and then pointing them to a biblical model and how Jesus would have us walk through things. And I think that's exactly what the church needs. It's not about the culture of gaining numbers, but rather growing in discipleship.
So the virtual faith link is heavily focused on meeting people that are vocational marketplace Christians and giving them the tools and the resources to live out their faith and connect with people in a place that could even be potentially hostile toward Christianity and Christian leadership out in the real world. Your wife is a pharmacist, my wife is a teacher. We have a lot of people in our churches that are out there around people all week, and it's getting harder and harder to figure out how to live out your life as a Christian in those vocational workplace, marketplace places where people are. But what is it about the virtual faith link design, in your opinion, that that is valuable in regard to vocational Christian leadership? Not vocational ministry leadership, but vocational Christian leadership out in the marketplace.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I think that one of the things that we battle is that church has become something that we do on Sundays. It's not a lifestyle. It's not who we are, and that's because of the discipleship drought that we have, where we're not taking people any deeper than singing some praise and worship songs and talking about the blessings of God and the goodness of God. All of those are very true things, and I'm not taking away from that. But on the other side of that, we got to talk about how God disciplines us. We got to talk about how God teaches us, and then we have to train people how to function in the workplace, to function in the world outside of church. And I think part of the culture shift is that we've got to get to where church is no longer something that we do on Sundays. It's a part of who we are. And I think there's a lot of factors that go into uh, making us the way that we are now, as far as the church in America, the big C, versus what we need to be. And what we need to be is a group of believers who live um, the discipleship model every day, everywhere that we are. And when we talk about vocational Christianity, that's exactly what it is. That's what I like about the virtual faith link model. It is built and designed to not just be something we do on Sundays. It's not a program. It's not something we just teach on Sundays. It's rather something that we uh, become a part of in who we are. It's a process that we go through that shapes, molds, and makes us into who we are supposed to be. And so when we do that, it spills over into the workplace. And that's what vocational Christianity is all about. Just being a model of Jesus, no matter where we are, not just on Sundays. It's not about getting our tanks filled. It's not just about worship, but rather it's all about the life that we live and sacrifice. When you really understand the heart of worship, it's not something we do on Sunday mornings anyway. I think Romans 12 speaks to that immensely when it says, this is your spiritual act of worship, to present yourself as a living sacrifice. And so being able to do that in the workplace sets us apart. And even in a hostile environment, if we can set ourselves apart and be like Jesus when it's hard, that's all the more reason why we have the opportunity to share who Jesus is to us. And so I think that gives us some credibility, and that's something that we greatly lack. That's why the church no longer has a seat at the table in America anymore. Nobody cares what the evangelicals think because we don't live what we practice on Sundays. It's two separate entities. And vocational Christianity is very much about being a disciple of Christ no matter where we are. And that's the one thing that we've failed to teach our people how to do because of the model that we set in place, where come to church on Sundays and get your Jesus. And that's the way that most people view that.
So, a lot of people are going to be hearing your story and hearing the things that you're sharing that are being prompted to prayerfully consider giving and supporting and participating in this. So, let me just ask you about the value piece on this. What value do you see in this virtual faith link process that prompted you to serve on the advisory team with the seminary?
Yeah, I think I have diligently looked and been through and sat through several different programs and processes looking for a discipleship model that would work for uh, our ministry in our context, not just here at First Baptist Jackson, but the previous church I pastored for 8 years. Got to see the Lord do some pretty cool things there as well. But just constantly looking for a way in which we can change the culture of the church. And I think that's something that is greatly needed. But the reason that I want to serve on the advisory team here is because I feel like this is organic in nature. When we talk about the difference between house church and uh, the program church, I think that this is something that is a blend of both, because I don't think it's a either or. I think it's a both and I think that we've got to be able to um, become relevant um, in people's lives. In order to do that, we're going to have to uh, come up with a process, something that can be reproduced time and time and time again, and create disciples that make disciples. And I think that's something that we have failed at miserably. We are good at creating followers of Jesus Christ. And I think that's even arguable sometimes if we're good at that. But we're good at drawing a crowd, but terrible at producing people that can produce other disciples. That's the part that we live off, and I think that's the true measure. And so when I look at Virtual Faith Link, I think that this is a process that could be reproduced, and it's organic in nature, much like a house church, but it still has enough structure where there's some accountability and um, some good teaching and training in place. It's not just the tools and the buffet. Here, come get it. It's more structured than that, but not so structured that it's a program. And so I firmly believe we can't program our way out of that. If you go back to the church culture conversation, I think that's a lot of the problem, right? Is we got too reliant upon program after program after program, and a program was the solution to our problems. But that's not the case, and I think we're seeing the results of that. And so, it's not a program, but it is a process. And so it's going to have people vested in it. And when people vest in it, I think you're going to see the results of disciples that make disciples.
Well, Brian, I appreciate your time and your heart for not only pastoring your church well and leading your family well, but being a disciple-making leader. And so thanks for spending some time with me talking about this.
Yeah, man. Thank you.